workshop. So you can also, we've actually preferred mostly that you put your questions in the chat, except when we're doing the live discussions, and that you can raise your hand and we'll call on you. We'll get to that when we are there. So as we have more people still joining us, we're just going to get started. I'll introduce myself. My name is Mark Benthy, and I'm the Executive Director for Earthquake Country Alliance, based at the University of Southern California's Southern California Earthquake Center. And ECA is a public-private grassroots alliance of leaders across the state. We have committees on that create content for different sectors, regional alliances that have different activities throughout the year. We have support from Cal OES and FEMA. And everyone, if you aren't already a member, if you maybe got this information because we emailed you through your Shakeout registration, please do go to earthquakecountry.org/join and get on our direct ECA email lists of activities coming up, not only in your region, but statewide. Those activities include development of activities and materials and guidance at our main website at earthquakecountry.org, and also in Spanish at terremotos.org. We support the Tsunami Preparedness Week, which will be a big focus of today's workshop. You can go to tsunamizone.org/California. This year's week is March 21st to the 25th. We'll learn more about that later on. And of course, we actually created back in 2008 and coordinate the Great California Shakeout. So that's coming up this year, October 20th, 10:20 a.m. on 10/20, as we often say, or you can do your drill any day of the year, and registration's already open. I mentioned committees we have. Just to let you know, if you're a member of one of these sectors or have an interest in them and want to contribute to the content that's being created and the activities that are held, like webinars throughout the year, you can go to earthquakecountry.org/committees, or even just put your interest in the survey from today's workshop, where we really will be putting that link into the chat. Please do complete the survey. It also has not only feedback from today's workshop, but what you like to see in future workshops and ways that you might want to participate. We also have outreach bureaus, and just one thing I want to highlight is we have a webpage, earthquakecountry.org/events, where you can request speakers, or as we start to open up booths at preparedness fairs, and we will be in touch with, fill out that form, and then we'll be in touch with you. Finally, this is maybe new for many of you. We have updated or created materials now in 15 languages, many different documents, earthquakecountry.org/languages. Of course, how to be safe during earthquake shaking, how to prepare, the 7 steps of earthquake safety, guidance for shakeout, and other documents. Okay, with that, I'd like to introduce our chairs for Earthquake Country Alliance Bay Area, Dena Gunning and Ray Bonilla is on now too, Sharon? It's to confirm.
Yes, Ray,
you are on.
Ray is here.
Great. Good morning. Thank you, Mark. Wonderful to be here this morning. My name is Dena Gunning. I'm with the Central County Fire Department, and I am one of the co-chairs for the Bay Area Earthquake Alliance. Wonderful organization. I've been with them over a decade now, I think, Mark. I'm losing track. A wonderful organization. So if you're not already involved, please do get involved, because the more we share this information, the more lives we can save over the course of time. And Ray, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ray Bonilla, and I have the pleasure of working for Meta in a business continuity leadership role. In this capacity, though, with the California Earthquake Alliance, I have the pleasure of co-chairing the coordinating committee for the San Francisco Bay Area with my colleague, Dena, and it's just a pleasure to be a part of this group. Daniel is also a part of the co-chairs. I'm sure he'll be joining us at some point today, but it's just great to be a part of an organization that's so collaborative and that's sharing information in cross-sector collaboratives to continue to evolve earthquake readiness across the state. So it's a pleasure to be here today.
Great, thanks, Ray. As Mark had mentioned, we have several different committees. So if you are interested, please contact Sharon. We do have an opening on the sector-based committee coordinator position. So please do. We have an events bureau, media bureau. We have everything that you could even think of. And now we have it in 15 different languages. It's quite impressive. So we are the go-to when it comes to earthquake and tsunami preparedness. So we'd like to welcome everybody this morning. We have a great lineup with Tsunamis and Know Your Zone. Love this platform. So we have Yvette, LaDuke coming up, Quakes Break, so our recent activities, Nick Graehl with tsunami science information, and then we have Mitigation Moment with Anthony Roggio from our Cal OES, and then we'll have an open discussion and networking session. So that's our agenda for today. And with that, we could go ahead and get started, and I can introduce Yvette LaDuke, our Earthquake, Tsunami, and Volcano Programs Manager with the California Office of Emergency Services. So Yvette, please take it away with Tsunamis and Know Your Zone. And welcome, glad to have you here today.
Hi, Dena, thank you so much. And thank you all for inviting me to speak today. Again, my name is Yvette LaDuke, as Dena said, and I am the manager at the California Office of Emergency Services for our Earthquake, Tsunami, and Volcano program. And so our program at Cal OES is a part of our overall statewide tsunami program, which is a partnership between us, the emergency management side, and the California Geological Survey, who is our science component of the statewide program. And I'm so glad that Nick is here today to speak with you as well to explain their role in our program. Next slide. So the question is, do we have tsunamis here in California? Many of us have seen the larger tsunamis that happen over in Indonesia and around the Pacific Rim, mostly on the eastern side, so by Japan. But we rarely hear about them impacting our coast here in California. However, in looking at this slide, since 2009, we've actually had 6 tsunamis impact our coast here in California. The most significant being the one I just mentioned, Japan 2011, where a earthquake that occurred offshore of Japan actually created a tsunami that traveled across the Pacific Ocean and caused about $100 million damage to our coast here in California. So next slide. So in addition to these 6 that have historically impacted our coast since 2009, we have the recent tsunami that just occurred back in January, the I apologize, I can't say it very well, but it was originated near Tonga, which if you look at the diagram in the lower right of the slide, you can see the general area over there in the South Pacific where there was a volcanic eruption. It was an underwater volcano that erupted and actually sent tsunami waves across the ocean, and it impacted our coast here in California. So that eruption happened the evening of January 14th, and our National Tsunami Warning Center, which is located in Alaska, monitored that event. However, we had not had any recent experience of a volcanic eruption that resulted in tsunami impacts over on our coast. So this was a bit of a different event, and Nick Graehl, who will be presenting after me, will give you some more information on this event. But just wanted to let you kind of see this diagram. And if you look in the lower left, it shows that there was a tsunami advisory that was implemented by our National Tsunami Warning Center for the entire US West Coast. And so that was put in place early Saturday morning, and we remained in an advisory for at least portions of our coast throughout Saturday. And it was finally lifted about 12:30 Sunday morning. So next slide. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video. This is a good video that's available actually online if you're interested in looking at it, and it'll give you some information about this volcanic eruption and how it impacted our coast. So Mark, if you could go ahead and play the video.
Large waves slammed ashore up and down the U.S. West Coast Saturday after a volcanic eruption in the South Pacific Ocean caused a tsunami. This person in Pacifica, California, was doing what officials warned people not to: stay away from coastal shorelines due to the danger of being swept away. And that's exactly what happened to two people fishing on the coast west of San Jose. Both were taken to the hospital. In Santa Cruz, water flowed into streets after rising in the city's harbor. One of the biggest waves, 4.3 feet, was reported in Port San Luis on the Southern California coast. Large waves were also reported in Monterey, San Diego, and San Francisco, as well as parts of Oregon, Washington, and Alaska. Earlier, waves over 2 feet were reported in Hawaii. The tsunami was generated by the eruption of an undersea volcano near Tonga. There was no word on possible damage or casualties there because communications were knocked out to the Pacific island nation.
Okay, thank you. Next slide. So here's some additional photos. That photo in the upper left on this slide is a photo from Tonga. And then the rest of the photos that you can see here are all photos that were taken here in the Bay Area. The one in the upper right, and then the lower two right ones were the Santa Cruz area. And then the one in the lower left was actually a surfer who was off the coast of the San Francisco Bay Area and needed to get rescued. So, it shows that even though we had an advisory level event, and I'll talk to you in a couple slides a little bit more what that means, there can still be impacts along our coast, and it is dangerous. And this just illustrates why it's so important when we do have a tsunami advisory, tsunami warning for our coastal areas for people to stay away from the water. Next slide, please. So we can see on these past two slides that we do have tsunamis that impact our coast here in California. So the next question is, well, how do I know if one is coming? Next slide. So there's two different types of tsunamis. We've been talking about this tsunami that just occurred last month that originated in Tonga, which would be what we would call a distant store tsunami. There are other tsunamis that could occur resulting from earthquake impacts off of our shore here in California that would be closer, which would mean we would have a shorter time window from the onset of that earthquake event to it impacting our coast. So if it's a local threat, so for example, it could occur off of our coast in the Cascadia region. That's probably our most significant local source tsunami threat. But there are other potential offshore earthquake triggers that could occur. Also underwater landslides that could result in a tsunami reaching our coast quicker. So it's important to know the natural warning signs for a tsunami, which are if you feel strong shaking for a long period of time and you're near the coast, if you see water receding, exposing the seafloor, so that would be an unusual drawback of water, or if you hear a loud ocean roar, it's something that's unusual, not the sound of normal waves crashing on the shore that you hear when you normally go to the beach. So if one or multiple of those warning signs occur, we want you to immediately leave the beach area and go to high ground because the tsunami could arrive in minutes. So for example, if there is a Cascadia event and you're up on the north coast, you may have 15 minutes or less to evacuate from that beach area and move inland into high ground. So it's really important that you know these natural warning signs because there may not be time for local officials to issue any type of alert notification when an event this close to our shore occurs. So very important to know those warning signs. Next slide. So this is our triumvirate that we have developed. Actually, Mark and his staff worked with our Redwood Coast Tsunami Work Group team to come up with this and have it available for all of you. So again, it reinforces the drop, cover, hold on, because if there is strong shaking, we want to make sure people are safe. If you try to run and evacuate, if there's strong shaking, there's the chance that you could fall and injure yourself. So we want to make sure that the shaking has stopped enough that you're able to walk and get out of harm's way. We want you to go to high ground, and then it's important to stay there because tsunami waves can impact our shore for up to 2 days. So it may subside for a while. It might look like things are calm and improving, but damaging waves can still occur, and they can occur again over long periods of time. So it's really important when you evacuate and you're in a safe location that you stay there until local officials tell you it's safe to return to the area. So next slide. So this slide here shows the different level of tsunami alerts. So as I mentioned on the prior slide, when we were looking at the video and also the pictures that show all that water inundation, we were actually in a tsunami advisory, which you can see is kind of that second down level, the worst damaging level being a tsunami warning. So that's when we know that there's going to be about 3 feet of water possibly impacting a lot of our coast. So that's when you're going to see a lot of on-land flooding. And for those types of events, those being our worst case events, the National Weather Service will issue a wireless emergency alert. So those are the alerts that you get on your cell phone, similar to an Amber Alert when you receive those. So you will get that if there's a tsunami warning, and you will know that you need to evacuate the beach area. For an advisory that like we had on January 15th, that's a little bit lower level event. And those we usually will impact just our marine and harbor areas and that immediate shoreline. And so for those, we want to get people off their boats because there could be still some damaging waves and strong currents in our marine and harbor areas. And we prefer not to have people on their boats because those can still cause damage. And we did have a couple of boats sink during this past advisory level event. So it's important to know that even though it's not quite our worst case scenario where it's a warning level event, there can still be hazards associated with an advisory level event. 2 other types of notification we receive for tsunamis are also tsunami watches, where those are, we know there's an event that has occurred. However, we have not made a determination if there will be any impacts in California. So we definitely want to monitor and be aware of the situation. And then there's also information statements, which are just an event has occurred. However, there are no impacts anticipated for our coast here in California. So these are all different types of alert that are issued from the National Tsunami Warning Center in Alaska. And so it's just important to know about those different level events and what to do and how to take action for each of those level events. Next slide. So this here is just kind of a flow chart I wanted to go through real quickly. This shows how alert and warning basically works. As I mentioned, the National Tsunami Warning Center is responsible for a tsunami alert and warning for the US West Coast. So they send out information to local weather service offices who then activate emergency alerts for our coastal area. And then also that information goes to the California State Warning Center, which is a part of our Office of Emergency Services here in California. And then they send out alert notifications to the county warning points, which are usually within your sheriff's offices at your sheriff's dispatch. And then that information is then sent from your county warning points out throughout the county to county OES and other officials locally, who can then activate your local alert and warning systems, whether that be Everbridge notifications, if you have sirens in your area, Civil Air Patrol, or local patrol services. So simultaneously, while that's happening, the local weather service office, once activating ES, also puts information out on NOAA weather radio. They can activate sirens and other messaging through the National Weather Service. And then all of that information, of course, is going to the public. So then as a member of the public, what can you do to make sure that you are prepared if there is a tsunami event? So next slide. So 3 things. First, be informed, which a lot of you are doing today. That's really the first step, and that's a great first step. So you can attend presentations like this here. You can attend events in your community. We do a lot of education and outreach activities throughout the year. So those are opportunities for you to get information and to learn about tsunamis. And then the second thing is to get prepared, and the third is to get involved. Next slide. So here's a couple places where you can get some information, because many of you may be wondering, am I in a tsunami hazard zone, and how do I know where it is? So the first thing you can do is go online. There's two websites listed here. The first one is myhazards.caloes.ca.gov. And on that website, you can actually type in your address, and it will let you know what your hazards are for that address. You can check your home, your place of business, your kid's school, your church, any other places that you frequent in your community. There's also a link to this site on the tsunamizone.org website, which you can see is listed at the bottom. That tsunamizone.org website will link you to both of these websites and a lot of other places for information. The other website is tsunami.ca.gov, and this website has a lot of really good information, and it also has our tsunami hazard area maps, which Nick will talk about. But those you can actually go in and click, and you can see where your hazard area is for your city or county. So next slide. So another way for you to know, if you don't like going on the computer, or you like to really kind of, when you're out in your community, see where your area of impact is. So we have a couple ways that you can do this. So on this slide, you can see the different types of tsunami signage that we have, and these are installed up and down our entire coast here in California. So when you're in an area, when you're at the beach and it is a tsunami area, you will be able to look around and see this signage. So it'll tell you if you're in the zone, and it will also tell you, as you can see in the upper left corner, there's an evacuation route sign with an arrow. So it will actually instruct you which way you need to go to exit that area if there is a tsunami alert notification indicating that one is occurring when you're there at the beach. So those are always important to take a look around when you're in the beach area, and take it, take a look at that signage and become informed of where your hazard areas are. Next slide. So this is another tool that we use to inform folks of their tsunami hazard areas. So on the left, you can see kind of a wall-mounted type map, and then in the middle is an example of our freestanding kiosk we have. And on the right is actually a map that we have installed in Pacifica. In San Mateo County, we actually have several kiosks installed in Pacifica. And this is a sample of one of the maps that's available there near the Pacifica Pier. So those maps you can actually walk up into and take a look at when you're in that tsunami hazard area. And it will actually pinpoint where you are. If you can see, it's kind of small on here, but it'll say you are here, and then it shows in blue with the arrows which way you would need to walk to get out of the hazard zone. So this is a really great way to demonstrate. Also on this, you see the QR code there. If you scan that QR code, it will actually link you with your local city or county website where you can sign up to receive alerts. So that's another important thing that you need to do. So on these last two slides, I've showed you our signage and I've showed you our maps that inform you when you're in a hazard area. The other important thing to do is to make sure you're signed up with local authorities to receive local alerts in your area. As I mentioned a couple slides back, if there is a tsunami warning, the National Tsunami Warning Center will issue a WIA, but you need to be plugged into local officials because they will provide you the information with where you need to go and what you need to do if there is a tsunami happening and you're in that area. So very important thing to do is to be plugged into local officials and to know where your hazard zone is. Next slide. So the next thing is, in addition to knowing your zone, is to get prepared. So there's a few examples on this slide of how you can do that. So it's great to have a kit. There's a checklist here of many items to have included in your kit. This is kind of a basic list. There are going to be some additional things that you'll want to add that you need personally, you and your family, and also if you have pets. Developing a family emergency plan, having an emergency contact card, and it's good to have that in writing Because if your cell phone battery dies or electronics are not working, it's great to have something actually written down that you can grab and take with you if you need to evacuate your home. And then also having a solar powered radio or battery radio, and having extra batteries, especially if it's a weather service radio, so that you will get important information if you need to be away from your home. So these are just a few items that you can use to get plugged in and get prepared. And then another great thing to do is get involved. It's great to see the signs and the maps and to visualize and see those, take a photo of those so you have them on your phone if you frequent one of these tsunami hazard areas that are identified on our coast. But it's also great to practice it, because having that muscle memory is really important. Before the 2011 tsunami that occurred, the Tohoku tsunami, there were a lot of impacts up in Del Norte County, specifically in Crescent City. And just prior to that tsunami, they had done an evacuation drill up in that area. And when that tsunami occurred, people were able to remember participating in that drill. And so when they actually needed to evacuate for the event, they remembered doing that drill. And so they remembered what they needed to do. And it helped them as far as being comfortable with doing that. And it helped so they didn't feel as panicked. So something really important is to actually practice the walk. You can do an official one during Tsunami Preparedness Week, which is coming up March 21st through 25th. If you want to just do something with your family, you can get some of your neighbors together and do one. Just really something really good. And as you saw on that slide as well, there is a video on tsunamizone.org. So thank you, Mark, for bringing up this slide as well. So you can click on that tsunami walk video and it will show you how to actually put one together. There's also other resources on tsunamizone.org with putting together a tsunami walk and how to do other tsunami preparedness activities. So this website provides you a wealth of resources, a wealth of information. Please feel free to download and use any of it. It's available on there for you to use. Also, if you are going to do any activities either during Tsunami Preparedness Week or throughout the year, we encourage you to go on tsunamizone.org and register your activities. This way, not only we can see what you're doing, but other folks can go on and see what you're doing, and they may get some ideas on things they can do in their community. So it's really helpful. And then also you can see on this website, we have the Tsunamis Fast, Furious, and Fascinating video. That's a video that I did in partnership with California Geological Survey last year. So you can click on that and get some good tsunami preparedness information. So next slide. So this here is just kind of what we call a resource card. This lists 6 of the websites that we use here within our state for our tsunami program. And it lists the different types of information that you can get on each of these websites. So we encourage you to visit these websites. There's great information on all of them. Resources that, again, please download, use them. You might need to tweak them for your specific jurisdiction, but we want you to use them. And if you need any assistance from us, next slide. This slide here has all of our contacts, our email addresses. So please feel free to send us an email if you have questions, if you'd like assistance with putting on an event, if you'd like us to come out and present information. We are always available to do that. And so please, yeah, contact us. And that's the end of my presentation, and we would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Yvette. So much information and just so vital for all of us. I know I try to remind people, even if you don't live on the coast, you need to have this information. We do possibly have bayside inundation, but you know, a lot of us go to the beach and things like that. So we really need to be aware and do those walkthroughs and know your area in case you ever did have to evacuate. So thank you so much. We do have some questions in the chat here. I'll go through a couple of them.
We have time for one quick question.
Okay.
We have one from Amy. I noticed following the event advisory, SF Alert sent out an Everbridge alert mentioning the tsunami advisory. However, the Berkeley Police Department and Fire Everbridge for this event was instead for a tsunami warning. was this just able to push the Marina district evacuation? We were not sure at UCB why there was a different response between the two places.
Yeah, so thank you for that. So, and that really highlights the difference in terminology, and that terminology gets kind of mixed in a lot of the different messaging that we saw. So technically this was a tsunami advisory. So there is a difference between an advisory level event and a warning level event. And sometimes the word warning is used a little generically just to say, hey, we're sending out something that folks need to be aware of. So instead of using the terminology alerting, they use that terminology warning. But technically this was an advisory level event, which does mean mostly marine area, meaning marinas, harbors, and immediate coastal areas. A warning would be a higher level event, which is a little more damaging, and we see more inundation on land. So the correct terminology for this should have been advisory, and that was in place for our entire coast. But we do know some did send out something indicating a warning. So we made sure that folks knew that this was an advisory level event.
Great. Thank you so much, Yvette. And we'll have time later on too for more questions. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Ray to introduce our next speaker. Ray?
Thank you so much, Dena, and great presentation, Yvette. Next, we're very excited to introduce and welcome Belle Philibosian, who is a research geologist for USGS. She's going to present our Quake Break today, and she's going to be providing us with an update on earthquakes in the Bay Area since the last time we were together in our online workshop. So with that, over to you, Belle.
Hi, everyone. I'll present a quick summary of the earthquakes that have happened worldwide and in the Bay Area during the last 3 months. Next slide, please. So worldwide, over the last 3 months, there have been 43 earthquakes above magnitude 6. This is very much a typical 3 months here on planet Earth. Thankfully, most of these earthquakes occurred far from populated areas or deep enough in the earth that they didn't cause significant damage. One of these did strike Northern California, which we'll talk about a little bit more in just a minute. 3 of these earthquakes were above magnitude 7, 2 in Indonesia and 1 in Peru. Now, a handful of these events did cause a few casualties and some damage in their local areas. None of them caused widespread damage enough to make really worldwide news or impacts, but I think it's instructive to point out that the deadliest earthquake, according to news reports, was actually not even on the list of magnitude 6s. It was a magnitude 5.3 in Afghanistan with 28 casualties. And that is an illustration of how the type of buildings that are in various areas have a huge impact on the destruction and casualties that occur from earthquakes. That area, the construction in that area of Afghanistan was very vulnerable to damage and collapse from earthquakes. Next slide, please. So zooming into Northern California, we have had during the last 3 months, 45 earthquakes above magnitude 3. That's the magnitude where it's likely that these earthquakes will be felt. And you can see on the map there, most of these were concentrated around Cape Mendocino. And that is pretty typical. Cape Mendocino is a very, very active, seismically active area of California, but that was even more concentrated in this case because most of these earthquakes were aftershocks of the magnitude 6 earthquake that occurred on December 20th. The magnitude 6 earthquake was actually now known to be 2 earthquakes that occurred only 11 seconds apart. It was initially reported as a magnitude 6 sequence slightly offshore, but after the seismic data was studied and looked into more deeply, we now know that there were actually 2 events. So next slide, please. So there were, in gray here, you can see there was actually an earlier magnitude 4 event at about 6:25 in the morning, followed by a magnitude 5.7, which around noon, which occurred offshore on the Mendocino Fault. And then 11 seconds later, while the shaking from the 5.7 was still ongoing, a magnitude 6.2 occurred onshore, but quite deep in the subducting Gorda plate, which is the tectonic plate that subducts underneath Northern California. So it's very, very likely that it was the shaking from the magnitude 5.7 rather, that triggered the magnitude 6.2. And if you experienced this earthquake, you probably couldn't tell the difference between the two. You would have just felt shaking all the time. Next slide, please. So there were, the magnitude 6.2 was very widely felt across Northern California. There were 4,400 felt reports. Of course, the strongest shaking was felt right in the Mendocino area. There was some local minor damage, photo there of some damage to a local grocery in Ferndale. And it was felt as far as down here in the San Francisco Bay Area, although that would have been fairly weak shaking and you probably wouldn't have felt it unless you were in a high building or indoors and really holding still and paying attention. The USGS did issue a shake alert, earthquake early warning for this event. And the alert was issued 10 to 20 seconds before strong shaking would have arrived in some of the local areas, such as the city of Eureka. And now just because an alert was issued doesn't mean that the alert arrived at your cell phone before the shaking arrived, but we did have reports from local people in the area that they did in fact receive an alert before they felt strong shaking. So that was a potential success story in this case. Next slide, please. So in the Bay Area itself, we had two earthquakes that were relatively widely felt. They were much smaller, only magnitude 3 or so, occurred almost in the same location, just about a mile apart in San Leandro. Those were on February 6th and February 11th. Each of those had over 1,000 felt reports on Did You Feel It? And they were associated with the Hayward Fault, which runs through the East Bay, as I'm sure most of you are aware. So next slide, please. Yes, someone said in the chat there was another one this morning, almost in the exact location, a little bit smaller, 2.9, I believe was the magnitude on that one. So just as a reminder, earthquakes can strike at any time. There's usually no warning. So if you feel an earthquake, first take protective action, drop cover and hold on. And then please report your experience. Go to the earthquake.usgs.gov website, to the Did You Feel It page, and report the shaking that you felt and the if there's any damage that you observed. Thank you.
Great presentation and very informative. Thank you so much for that. If you're not speaking, just make sure you're on mute because we did hear some typing throughout Belle's very informative presentation. Is there any general questions that anyone has for Belle at this point before we thank you, Belle, and move on to the next speaker?
I'm not seeing any in the chat as of yet, but if anybody has any questions, please place them in the chat and then we can address them later in the presentations.
Sounds fantastic. Thanks again, Belle. Over to you, Dena.
Great, thanks, Ray. So our next speaker, I always get excited about the science. So our next speaker is Nick Graehl, an engineering geologist with the California Geological Survey, doing tsunami science and information and inspiration. So Nick, take it away. I'm excited to see how you're going to inspire us to get prepared for tsunamis.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So again, my name is Nick Graehl. I'm an engineering geologist with the California Geological Survey. My specialty is tsunami science and guidance. I've been working on tsunamis for about a decade now, including participating in a post-tsunami survey in 2010 after a large earthquake and tsunami struck Chile's coastline. Observing the tsunami aftermath just a few weeks after a large event is an experience that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. It influences how I conduct myself at work, including today as we talk about tsunami hazards and how you can prepare for the next tsunami in California. All right, let's get started. So I'd like to start by telling you a story about my first post-tsunami survey as a reminder of the importance of preparing Californians for the next tsunami. A post-tsunami survey is a scientific evaluation of an area recently impacted by tsunami. It's something not everyone gets to experience, but once you have, you'd never forget it. Next. In 2010, a magnitude 8.8 earthquake just off the coast of Chile triggered a devastating tsunami. The event even impacted parts of California, causing damage to harbors and docks. At the time, I was not well prepared for the event, but a lot of people in Chile were. Next. Part of effective risk communication is just getting the word out in advance about how to respond to a tsunami. We learned that the loss of life from the tsunami in Chile was minimized in part because coastal residents knew how to respond to a local tsunami. It had become part of the public consciousness after the major earthquake in 1960. Coastal schools, like the one pictured above, routinely practiced tsunami evacuation drills. Next. Coastal residents had also regularly participated in evacuation drills similar to what we do in California during Tsunami Preparedness Week in March every year. If you want to plan or organize a local tsunami walk, check out tsunamizone.org. In a few slides, I'll show you how you can find out if you're in a tsunami hazard area. Another factor that's crucial to readiness, or the lack of it, is pre-disaster expectations and the culture for dealing with catastrophe. Preconceived notions are terribly important because they're often wrong. Chile's knowledgeable coastal population almost universally responded to the ground shaking as a warning to move to higher ground and escape the dangerous tsunami that followed. One important lesson we learned was that inland visitors were not fully aware of coastal tsunami hazards, not like the coastal residents who are more familiar with their tsunami hazard. Most of the deaths occurred at coastal campgrounds filled to capacity with inland visitors unaware of how to respond to a local tsunami. In one area, coastal campers ran toward the beach during the earthquake and were overtaken by the tsunami. Educating coastal residents and coastal visitors about tsunami hazards is equally important. In California, our state tsunami program works with local emergency managers and county and city officials to help bring tsunami awareness to coastal populations. We are updating tsunami hazard maps statewide using new modeling and information for all coastal counties. Some of these new maps and products you already find in your local community. And as an example, here's one that's shown at a tsunami informational kiosk in Orange County. To know your zone, check out the latest tsunami hazard maps for evacuation planning on our state tsunami webpage at tsunami.ca.gov. Tsunami maps are the basics of tsunami hazard mitigation planning and public awareness. We need to know what areas are at risk, what areas are safe, and we need to communicate that information to those who work, live, or visit a tsunami hazard area. We recommend to avoid harm from a tsunami that you want to move outside of the hazard area. Sometimes evacuation takes longer than expected, so it's a good idea to evacuate without delay. These tsunami hazard area maps, created by the California Geological Survey, show where science suggests that tsunami waves may flood on land. These maps are based on a suite of very large and realistic tsunami scenarios where people in coastal communities should evacuate from during future large tsunami events. Right now, our maps cover about 70% of the California coastline, and we're anticipating to release the remainder of these counties this summer, including counties of Marin, Sonoma, Napa, and Solano. Here in this map, we're showing the generalized tsunami hazards broken up by different regions in California. Northern California, north of Cape Mendocino, has the highest hazard and also the largest, highest run-up elevations along the coast, primarily because of the local subduction zone, the Cascadia subduction zone that that's just offshore. And an event that occurs on the subduction zone like this one would be similar to what has occurred in Japan and in Chile, because these create the largest tsunamis, and also the proximity to the coast, you'll have the least amount of time to evacuate. For the Bay Area and the rest of Southern California, including Central California, the dominant hazard is from the Alaskan Aleutian subduction zone, which is a distant source tsunami for California. The tsunami would take approximately 4 hours or longer to reach our coastline, giving residents enough time to get the notification and evacuate out of the hazard area. Next. There were many positive stories of response and recovery in Chile, including how one 12-year-old girl's actions saved the lives of everyone in her remote village. On Robinson Crusoe Island, 400 miles off Chile's coast, the local islanders only felt the quake minimally, so they were unaware of the life-threatening risk of tsunami. We learned that an alert 12-year-old girl on the island had the presence of mind to call her uncle on the mainland. The girl found out that the quake was huge, ran to her village's warning bell and sounded the alarm. She prevented 200 deaths. This was a girl who was paying attention, who knew something about earthquakes and tsunamis, who sought more information and saved her village. We continually learn and improve after each tsunami event, including from Chile, the 2011 Tohoku tsunami, and the most recent Tonga tsunami event. Next slide, please. The biggest lesson we learned from the 2011 Japanese tsunami was that the evacuation maps they had underestimated tsunamis because they were only based on historical events, which were the past 100 to 500 years, even though there was geologic evidence for larger events that occurred on a 1,000-year basis. The 2011 event was one of those 1,000-year events. And the image on the right is a picture of an evacuation zone that was flattened by the tsunami in 2011. As at this location, the tsunami traveled 2 to 3 times further inland in this area. Our new modeling and maps that we have built into our tsunami hazard area maps use a 1,000-year average return period that includes updated sources such as a magnitude 9.3 earthquake off the coast of Alaska and other local events along the coast. Next. Heading over to the state tsunami website at tsunami.ca.gov, you'll find all of this information, all the new maps, and including a space on this webpage now dedicated to the Tonga tsunami that occurred in January 15th. Perfect timing. So, go and use your phone to go online and check out the website. There's a ton of resources here you could use to prepare yourself for the next tsunami. We'll just take a quick look at the Tonga tsunami and the impacts that we had in California. Next. So on the 15th of January, actually, let me back up because the volcano exploded the day before on the 14th, right? So the volcanic eruption from the Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'apai eruption occurred about 5,000 miles away from California. Typically, a volcanic explosion like this wouldn't be as large, and it hasn't happened like this in the past, and so it caught the warning center off guard. A volcanic explosion like this would typically only be impacting the regional area. We'll take a look at the volcano in the next slide here. So as you can see from this animation here, which Mark, if you could play that, would be fantastic, thanks. So what you're only seeing from aerial imagery is just the tip of the volcano, right? And this has been an active volcano for the last couple of years, and it's been rebuilding and then kind of gets washed away. Most of the volcano is underwater. You can't see that. This was such a violent explosion that it just blasted all the water, and the island that was there, it just disintegrated. There's hardly anything left of the island. It created a pressure wave that was sent around the world, that was seen traveling the world 10 times over. And the blast from the pressure wave was heard as far as like Alaska. So on some of let's go to the next slide, please. Here you can see a before picture and an after picture, and most of the island is just vaporized in the explosion. right? Next. So in this tsunami travel time map that was created here, we could see the location of the eruption, which occurred on January 14th in the evening at 8:14 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And the PTWC picked up the volcanic event and was monitoring that right away. NTWC was also monitoring it, but they didn't send out their first information statement until the 15th at 3 a.m. after it hit Hawaii, right? There wasn't a lot of places in the immediate area that they could have observational data. So it wasn't until the tsunami rolled through Hawaii that they looked at the tide gauges and information and said, oh my goodness, this is way bigger than what we anticipated. We need to put California in an advisory level. So that's at 4:46 a.m. They send out their first tsunami advisory. And I should say that that it would impact Central California first. So some of the anticipated tsunami arrival times were going to be for Central California, and then later times would be, north and south of that location. Next. What we found from this event was that local sea conditions matter. Even though this was a smaller advisory level event, it coincided with a peak of tides, which did lead to some minor coastal flooding in some locations, most notably seen in Santa Cruz. So all the marograms, which are the tidal stations on the left, you could see the anticipated height of tides, and then the arrival of the tsunami, and that's the red wiggles. So in San Francisco, next slide, please. Not only did you have it occurring at the same time of tides, but you also had large waves occurring offshore at the time that were compounding the hazard. The good thing about the Bay Area is that it helps lower the hazard down because it's restricted through the Golden Gate gap into the Bay Area. However, you'll still see, sure, we could go to the next slide. You'll still see some strong tsunami-induced currents in the Bay Area, right? So in this example, go ahead and play the video, Mark. There was some damage noticed in the Bay Area and some minor flooding. Can you go ahead and mute that too? That'd be awesome. It's some dramatic music that we don't need to hear. But there's lots of information and footage out there. And so we wanted to go out there and document the damage and document some flooding. And one of our teams went out here. In this particular location, there was strong currents enough to break the dock apart and damage the pile here. So that's the main focus and hazard for folks inside the Bay Area is the strong currents, right? That are going to impact people in the water, next to the water, and the maritime communities. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next one. In Santa Cruz, this Tonga event was different because it was a smaller event, but it occurred at high tide. So there was some localized flooding that occurred. Compare that to 2011, which was a larger event. It happened at low tide, and there wasn't the on-land flooding, but there were stronger surges throughout the harbor. I think that's good for that slide. So you can't talk about tsunamis in California without it being a maritime story. And in most cases, we tell boaters that it's safer to leave your boat and to evacuate outside of the tsunami hazard area. Like we saw in this event, there was only minimal damage to harbors. There was some in Santa Cruz, but those are typically the hot spots. And the infrastructure that they replaced after 2011 did fantastic in this event. And mainly the damage that occurred in this event was because it was older harbor infrastructure. If you want to know more about maritime safety, please reach out after the talk and we could talk more about that. But for the brevity of the space and time here, we'll just go ahead and skip to the next one. And as a reminder to folks, you can't surf a tsunami, right? Like, nor would you want to, because tsunamis have no face to surf like a regular ocean wave, and they're usually filled with dangerous debris. Go ahead and play the video there. This is a video on the left showing some surfers getting rescued because they wanted to surf the tsunami, but quickly realized this was a bad idea. We don't want people to get the impression that they could go in and surf a tsunami, nor do we want people to go down and take tsunami selfies, right? You're going to put yourself at risk, but then if you need to get rescued, we're also putting first responders in the hazard zone too. So we try and tell people, don't go down to take a tsunami selfie. It's not worth it. Don't hold surfing competitions during a tsunami advisory. That's not smart either. Okay, go to the next slide.
And we didn't have a video there.
Oh, that's okay.
Retransferred.
There's lots of video that folks could look up about that online too. So in summary, I just want to say that all of this information that I'm sharing with you, the websites, our guidance, it's all part of your personal tsunami toolbox, right? So you're trying to gather that information so you know how to be prepared for the next tsunami. And remember that CalOES, Yvette, and myself at CGS, we're here to help answer any questions and just consider us another tool in your toolkit. Thanks for your attention today, and available to help answer any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Nick. Appreciate all the great information and images. That really brings it home for folks that, you know, it doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but it still can have big impacts. And all reminds us to watch the tide tables too, right? So lots of information. So thank you so much. And now I'll pass it back to Ray for the next speaker. Ray?
Excellent. Thank you so much. So our next speaker is going to be Anthony Rogelio. He's the Southern California Regional Lead for Hazard Mitigation for the California Office of Emergency Services. And he's going to be presenting a mitigation moment for us today. So Anthony, over to you, and thanks for being with us today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Hey, everyone. My name is Anthony Roggio. Some of you may have familiarity with me, may have worked with me in the past. I represent the CalOES Hazard Mitigation Assistance Branch. I'm the lead specialist there. And today I'm just going to go over our program, what it is we do, what we offer, and you know, how we can help, you know, kind of bolster the mitigation efforts in the state. Who are we? We're the anyone who's familiar with CalOES, we're the state's Homeland Security Department. My branch specifically, we're there to promote that long-term resiliency, reduce loss to life and property from natural hazard events. That includes any natural hazard event. We don't look at man-made hazards. So anything that it relates to a natural hazard is something that we can focus on. Next slide, please. So what is hazard mitigation? Like I had mentioned, any sustained action taken to reduce or eliminate risk to life and property from natural hazard events. Again, keep that in mind. Tsunamis count, earthquakes count, wildfires are obviously a huge one right now, but these are what we look to prevent those damages from. What we do specifically, we help to manage and administer federal grant funding available through these three programs. The Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, which is specific to presidentially declared disasters when one of those happens. The HMGP funding pool is opened, and that is a statewide level program. There are also annually appropriated programs, one that is relatively new, known as BRIC, and another one for known as FMA. Those are congressionally appropriated, and those are competitive nationwide, and we help to administer those two programs. Who can we help? State agencies are a big one. Territorial agencies, tribal governments. We help a lot of cities, counties, special districts such as fire protection districts, flood protection, watershed, water protection districts. We can also help private nonprofits as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this right here is a kind of a compressed list of the projects that we look at in our program as projects that pertain directly to what we're talking about today. We see a lot of things such as earthquake early warning systems, tsunami early warning systems, tsunami vertical evacuation towers, public outreach campaigns. Stuff like that we've had some quite a bit of success with in our program, and are certainly things that we look to help fund through the program to help ultimately promote that safety and resiliency in our communities. Next slide, please. BRIC, and this new program that has come about as of the past few years is a capability and capacity building program offered at the national level. These are kind of just some quick blurbs on what kind of offerings can be, or kind of projects can be considered under that program. I won't go into any detail on this specifically. Next slide, please. Climate resiliency and adaptation, a big push for the state and for the federal government, FEMA recently. So we're definitely looking for projects that can address hazards while also additionally, implementing some type of climate resiliency or adaptation approach. Next slide. This one didn't come out quite as good as I had hoped, but I won't go into too much detail since we're not here to talk about wildfires. But as you all know, wildfires are a huge threat to us regularly in the state. But I won't go into too much detail. But these are certainly some projects. Another funding opportunity that we have on an annual basis is the post-fire mitigation. It's a annual funding that's kind of a batch of dollars that were come through from our fire mitigation assistance grants declarations that we received over the year. Another funding opportunity that we have to help mitigate future disasters. Next slide. So that is just a very, very brief overview of the program and what it is that we offer. I just want to kind of bring it back to what it is that we're focused on here today with being earthquakes and tsunamis and whatnot. We do have exceptionally great success with projects in our program. We have built some strategic partnerships with some other state agencies, one in specific, the California Earthquake Authority. We built a strategic partnership with them and FEMA to address the housing concerns around the state and implement a very, very broad scale mitigation program to help structurally retrofit, single family homes to keep them from falling in the event of an earthquake. We've had a huge amount of success with that program. We're keeping that going. We've also implemented earthquake early warning systems in Southern California at hospitals, school districts, et cetera. Very, very good results there. And we would encourage any of you who are considering doing something of that nature to reach out to us. My email address there for you, and our website where you can find more information. If you're considering a project to mitigate a hazard such as an earthquake or tsunami, we want to hear about it. We want to help you with it. With that said, that's my very brief presentation. I'll take any questions.
Anthony, I have a question. If someone is with a local jurisdiction or nonprofit or other eligible group for some of these funding sources, what's the time frame kind of look now through the next time where these applications will be due, and when do they work with you? And
right. So that's a great question, Mark. We have how the program essentially will work is there are the annual appropriations of funding that come usually around the fall each year. The other ones are specific to disasters that occur. And with the fire disasters that have happened every year, that's pretty much opened up a funding opportunity every year. We address every hazard. We don't look at focusing on something specific. So if a fire happens, we will also look at flooding, earthquake, tsunami. How the funding works, our program is it's relatively slow, unfortunately. And if something were to happen today where we start soliciting applications from folks and we start looking for them to submit notices to us that they're interested, we're looking at probably it being 12 months, 18 months or so before we see those projects actually getting funded. The review process can be quite long. So this is not like an emergency program. It's more or less like we have some problems that we know we need to address, and we'd like to address them in the future. That's how our program works. Hopefully that answers it.
And there's probably like an email list people can get on to be notified.
Absolutely.
When the opportunities are going to come out?
Yes, absolutely. So our website is the best place to go occasionally, but I would encourage anyone with any interest to email that address you see right there on the screen, and you'll get on our listserv, and we'll blast out anything of relevance from that email address and let everyone know about what's going on and what we're looking to do in the near future. So I encourage everyone on this call today who might have interest to do that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Dena and Ray.
Great, thanks, Mark. Thanks, Anthony, for the update. And yeah, keep your eyes open. There's always grant cycles and things. So definitely sign up for those notifications so that you have the best opportunity. Because it does take a lot of preparation. And then we're also asking if you could please take a moment and click on the link to do the survey. Sharon has put it in the chat. So there's a quick survey monkey we'd love you to take. And let us know, do you have any other ideas for presentations? We're always looking for presenters and ideas. And what topics would you like to see coming up in our Bay Area workshops? So we'll open it up. Ray, do you have anything? Would you like to help out with some of the questions?
Sure. I mean, if there's any questions that anyone has, are they able to come off of mute, or is that all just?
Yes. So at this point, down on your menu bar, you should see a reactions tab or button, and you can click the raise hand. We can use that. You can also still type your question or say, I have a question, however you want to do it. It's kind of open, free, and then we can actually see you ask your question. You can ask it live and for response. And it can be on anything we've talked about today, other ideas, what for the future. What actions have you been inspired to take based on presentations so far today?
And Mark, can we open it up for the gallery so we can all see one another now?
Yeah, I'm going to actually stop the sharing of the slides. So make sure you see the Survey Monkey link, and that will open up, and you can set your view to see everyone.
Great, there we go. So you can click on gallery in your upper right-hand corner. Oh, I have a black lab puppy. He was that small once, Joanne. Oh my gosh. Always distracted by puppies. So are there any questions? Would you like to raise your hand? And I might not see all the hands raised, so Sharon will help us out with that, I'm sure.
We have a question in the chat from Michael. Do the tsunami chart break down the damage expectations?
Hi, this is Yvette. So I can talk about that a little bit. And so we are actually in our program working on a HAZAS project right now. And so this project is actually looking at our tsunami hazard area, and we're able to doing different hazards runs. Sorry, I'm not speaking coherently right now. So we're able to do the hazards runs, and we're going to provide each of our coastal counties with information regarding potential damage and economic impacts for each of the tsunami hazard areas. So that's going to be our first run. We're going to try and break that down for smaller events in the future. But again, we will have information showing potential damage and economic losses for our coastal counties, hopefully within the next few months.
Great, thank you, Yvette.
We had a good conversation. Nick, you might want to touch on this regarding sea level changes.
Right, yeah, so that's usually one question we always get asked, right? Like, do our maps take into account sea level rise? And as we all are aware, sea level rise occurs very slowly over a long period of time, right? So, of course, if there's going to be, higher water, there's going to be a larger chance for impacts from just storm surge and tsunami events. What we do, and I was just about to respond here, is that our tsunami mapping guidance suggests to update tsunami maps every time there's either new information or new modeling, or every 5 to 10 years. So these maps that are out now, they're continually reviewed with the best scientific information available. And that will take into account any changes in topography, or if there's any mitigation measures like sea level, walls or something for sea level rise. We'll have that incorporated into our modeling. So the frequency of how often we come out with the maps will address any issue with sea level rise.
Great, thank you.
There's another question. Is the tsunami hazard chart and map that shows the contributing source earthquake event available somewhere on tsunami.cal.gov or elsewhere. It's a slide that Nick showed.
You guys could correct me if I'm wrong though, organizers, but I think the information in this talk will be available for folks to download. So I think you'll have that presentation slide so you could use later. Otherwise, you know, there's a lot of details that go into making these maps, and we have probabilistic maps that probabilistic tsunami hazard analysis results that go into making the maps. And so for those folks that speak of probability, we deaggregate those results, which means we could look at all the sources and figure out which one contributes most to hazard at different locations and figure out what the hazard contributes most to that particular location. That's why I was saying for the Northern California folks, it's the Cascadia subduction zone is the largest contributed hazard there. And then south of that, the largest hazard for everyone else in the whole state actually comes from the Alaska subduction zone. And that's a distant source tsunami. So we'll have enough time to get the notification, get the message, and evacuate everyone out of the hazard zone in time.
That's great. That's great. We have a question from Heidi, who is currently a student pursuing a degree in emergency management. Besides getting involved in local CERT programs, are there other volunteer opportunities and/or internships you would recommend to help in tsunami and earthquake preparedness?
Well, I know we have an opening on the ECA committees. If you're interested in public sector. But there are a lot of different opportunities. You could check with the Cal Volunteers website too for volunteer opportunities. I'm not sure, Heidi, where you're located. But depending on the area that you're in, there are lots of different opportunities. You might want to just check with your local Office of Emergency Services or Sheriff's offices. And even with Cal OES, there might be some internships. Citizen Corps is a good one too. There are internships, summer internships. I know that you can get in on some of the reserve corps and things like that have specific topics related to disaster. So those are some things. Does anybody else have any other suggestions or opportunities for Heidi?
Actually, yeah. So Dena, with Cal OES, we do offer summer internship programs. I don't know of the specific details, but we do offer internship programs through Cal OES, and as Cal OES being that it's one of the premier agencies for emergency management in the world, it's certainly an opportunity that if you should be so lucky to be a part of it, it's going to look excellent on a resume. But yeah, go to the Cal OES. Visit the general website and look for anything that talks about summer internship programs, and I would encourage anyone who wants to go down that path with their future to try to get involved.
Great, thanks, Anthony.
This is Christy from Alameda County OES.
Hey, Christy.
Cal OES is absolutely one of the premier organizations that you would want to intern with. However, if you're looking at a wider net, in a previous life, I used to belong to the DOE side of the house, the Department of Energy side of the house. So if you have any national security laboratories near you, I'm not sure where you're currently residing. I used to work at a couple of national security laboratories, and we had interns every year within our emergency preparedness, emergency management organizations.
Great, thanks, Christy. Yeah, there's quite a bit of opportunity out there. You want to probably look at where you want your focus and find your niche, but the volunteering is certainly a way to do that. I know, I still volunteer. I volunteered my whole life and disaster drills and things like that. So wherever you can get experience and figuring out and helping which area you would like to focus on, because there's lots of different areas. So that's half the battle, right, Ray? for those of us that have been in the field for 30 something years.
Another opportunity for folks who are looking to get, more training, more involvement, more information on, just emergency management in general, or any of the various, fields that are within emergency management. I would encourage you also to look at CSTI, which is the California Specialized Training Institute, which is run by Cal OES. It is a training institute and has all aspects of emergency management, preparedness, response involved with it. You can take many of those classes. You can get certifications that look excellent on a resume. Also, FEMA's Emergency Management Institute, or EMI, is another one for you to take some trainings and whatnot. So those would be two very, very good resources for you. For some additional training and certifications and whatnot.
And there's lots of online courses you can take.
Almost all of them are, yeah.
Yeah, the independent study courses now are a lot more available. There's a lot more of them as well to get you, dialed into that. You can also join CESA, our California Emergency Services Association, which I kind of have the logo on there. It's CESA.net. Which is the Professional Association of Emergency Managers for California. So that's the California Emergency Services Association. Fantastic organization to be a member of, and really a great opportunity for networking and also, finding positions and things like that. So that's a wonderful organization. And we do have a conference coming up in May in San Diego. So visit CESA.net for more information about that. May 2nd to the 5th. And yes, I'm hosting, I'm the conference chair. So we want to see everybody there. Come down and see us, our first in person since Runner Park. So looking for it. And there is something for everybody. We've got quite a menu. And I'm sure we'll have Mark there from ECA. We gotta confirm you, Mark, that's for sure. So looking forward to seeing everybody in person again. Exciting stuff. Do we have any other questions? Let's see.
On any topic.
Any topic.
Earthquake or tsunami, at least.
Yeah, let's see. There's one here representing VA emergency management. Our VA hospitals have volunteer opportunities or even EM job openings for Region 9 and can be a point of contact. This includes Honolulu. Ooh, Tony, Mom, maybe I should be talking to you. I would love to retire in Hawaii. That would be a good retirement place, wouldn't it? But yeah, you think beyond your scope, right? And I'll tell you, going to the FEMA site and just looking at all of the courses that are available will really help you kind of narrow down the fields within emergency management that you're interested in, because there is lots to choose from.
We have an excellent question in the chat from Nick, who asks, what are your plans for Tsunami Preparedness Week next month?
Great question,
So
Nick.
this is a question to everyone. If you have thought about or might think about right now, what are some of the things you might do during Tsunami Preparedness Week? Or have done in the past, that could be a good example for others to think about for this year.
This is Yvette too. Even though we have Tsunami Preparedness Week scheduled March 21st through 25th, if you want to schedule events, you don't have to schedule them during that week. We do have some events that are being scheduled earlier in the month, and some even go into kind of that first week of April. So if you are interested in doing something, but that particular week doesn't work with your schedule, we're happy to support events in addition to that week or outside of that week.
Great, thank you, Yvette. And same goes for Shakeout, right? We always tell people that for Shakeout, because we all know we have busy calendars, and trying to get folks together to do a preparedness campaign, especially for a week-long event or something that you're doing within your jurisdictions, you can spread it out. You don't have to do everything at once. But I love the idea. I think some of the ideas from previous years were walking the tsunami zone to the clear zone, right? So getting out of the hazard zone you know, whether it's the coastal side or the bay side. I think a lot of people don't think we'll have any impacts on the bay side, but that's not the case either, is it, Nick?
Very true, very true. There's actually a lot of people inside the Bay Area, and if they needed to evacuate in a worst case scenario, that's a lot of people moving out of the hazard zone. So it's good to understand those, you know, how far is it going to take to walk out, right? Because we don't want people driving out. It's going to just be a cluster of cars and you won't be able to get anywhere. So practice of, I would say the first step is just go and knowing your zone. Find the map for your area. That could be your only thing you do for Tsunami Preparedness Week. Just grab a map, right? If you want to level up your game, do a tsunami walk and actually walk out of the hazard area from your home.
I'll add in, don't forget the people around you that may not know as much as you do, and educating them about where, if you're in a zone, or where to get to be out of that zone, and pay close attention to people who may need assistance in evacuating. Do you know your neighbors? Do you know who is someone who uses a wheelchair? All those other factors, because you're going to want to have made sure that they knew and had a chance to get out, and not have, rather than not have taken that time and then they got lost because when you could have saved them. So I mean, it's a real actual serious thing to consider in this sense. So any other ideas of what people are doing or might or have done or related to Tsunami Preparedness Week? And reminder, you can go to tsunamizone.org and register your activity like you do for Shakeout. It's just, there are many different types of activities you can say that you're going to do. But you'll be counted along with the, you know, several 100,000 people who participate each year.
Oh, Mike, this is Yvette. I just wanted to mention real quick too, I saw in the chat there was a question regarding presentations and activities and whether they are in person or virtual. So the answer to that is we can do either one or both. So we are able to schedule some activities in person now, and we're really looking forward to those. We do have a couple tsunami walks on the books right now. But if you would like us to come and present to your staff in person, we are available to do that as well. If you're planning an exercise, we're happy to participate. We can help plan. We can provide some technical expertise if that's needed regarding tsunamis. So just please reach out to us, and we're happy to help support.
And I just put a link in the chat for how you can complete an event, like a speaker request form that can be for any speaker. If, for example, if you would like Yvette to speak, you can add her in that form, or Nick, or just say general tsunami preparedness presentation. We will then receive that information and share it with your requested presenter, so they have all they need to know about your event. It's a really streamlined way of asking the information that you're looking for, and for when, and for what type of presentation. We do have some examples that are I saw in the chat. One about Oakland Airport. Will, do you want to say anything about that?
Hey, yeah, I really appreciate the time. We are in late April. We're going to do usually do a full-scale exercise involving an aircraft incident. We're going to do the same this year, but it's going to be triggered by an earthquake event. It's going to be something we haven't done before. So we are soliciting volunteers, looking for about 100 folks, and I'm about halfway there. So anyone interested in volunteering and watching us run a full-scale exercise, they're more than welcome. My email address, I'll give it to you all phonetically, is Whiskey Kilo Uniform November Alpha at portoakland.com. So WCUNA at portoakland.com. Again, it's Thursday, April 28th. Probably going to be about 10 to about 1. But we would like to see you all there.
Great, thanks, Will. And
Thank you.
you know, this is a great opportunity to be a part of an exercise and see it from the other side, and really get the feel. If you've never role played as a victim, it's really easy. They'll probably moulage you up and different things. So Katrina and I have done plenty of that in the past. It's a lot of fun, and it really does help you realize what it takes for responders to do their jobs and to see a little bit of their action in real time. And the airport exercises are, I think, amongst my favorite, because that was one of my first ones at SFO. So I love the airport drills, especially the full scale. Can't say enough that it is really a great experience. And if you get the chance to volunteer, that you should do that. One other thing I really want to stress too, out of all of this discussion about preparedness and being ready, the easiest and best thing that you can do is sign up for your alerts. Subscribe to your alerts in your area, and you can also subscribe to the MyShake app. Get the MyShake app, and then you get the earthquake notifications. You can set your settings however you like, but for sure sign up for your emergency alerts in your jurisdiction. You can look that up by county, or you can go to alertthebay.org, which has all of the links for every county in the state, or sorry, in the Bay Area, but you can get links for other counties too in the state through the Cal OES site as well. So really want to make sure that you get registered and have your friends, neighbors, family, loved ones, co-workers, make sure everybody's registered, because if we can't alert you, we can't get you that information, and we want you to be prepared, but we want you to be informed. So we need to be able to reach you. With that said, moving on to short announcements. So we can go around the horn, and again, if somebody wants to raise their hand or just take yourself off mute if you have a short announcement for the good of the order.
Hey, Dena, this is Jeff. Can you hear me?
Yes, Jeff, from San Francisco Airport.
Yes, exactly. And hello, Will. My shout out goes to you. Haven't heard from you in a while, of course, with pandemic. But I did want to address briefly what we and I have been texting about the San Mateo County Bay exercise. I don't know if you want to push this. This is a kind of a new tool. We had a presentation at our outreach meeting that we had here at SFO just last week on the Zone Haven platform as a tool for evacuation in the event of a tsunami. I don't know much about it. We just had an initial presentation. Dena, I'm not sure if you are have more info that you want to maybe address this or introduce this to folks that are in other areas that are in tsunami zones, like in the county perhaps, but just a thought. It's probably a tool that we're looking at, not necessarily for the airport per se, but how we can push it out to our employees that live in other areas, both wildland areas that would need to be evacuated, as well as tsunamis. So it's just a thought, not so much a question per se.
Right. Great, Jeff. Thank you, because we do have your, it's Know Your Zone as well. So we have throughout San Mateo County, and actually the Bay Area now, all of the Bay Area counties are on board with Zone Haven, which is a evacuation platform that we are using on the responder side as well as the community side. So it's community.zonehaven.com. You can look up your zone. You can also click on a link to subscribe to the alerts for that county as well. So you can go to community.zonehaven.com to get more information and to look up your zone. You just need to drop in your address. We are working on getting the inundation maps layered onto that platform as well, so that we will be able to look at all of the zones that we potentially would need to evacuate. We did use this for the Tonga tsunami this last round. We used it for the CZU wildfires. And so it's a wonderful platform, and it's specifically for evacuation management. So there's an aware side, which is for the public, and then there's the evac side, which is for first responders on the other side, so that we can coordinate. And we've done a lot of pre-planning, about 2 years almost of pre-planning and getting our zones identified. And so there's still some counties that are working on it, but fantastic platform for everybody. And so we can send out notifications to specific areas and zones that we would need to evacuate. So really important information, and everybody should look at how many ways they have in and out of their neighborhood or where they frequent at the coast. it's just a really good idea, even when you're on vacation. I've had things happen when I was on vacation as well. So knowing how to get alerts when you're on vacation. I'm still connected to the Maui alerts, and honestly, that I got that tsunami notification from the Maui alert before I got my San Mateo County alert, because they were, of course, in the inundation areas first. So sign up for your National Weather Service, go to My Hazards, find your hazard zone and see what hazards you're susceptible to in your area. Great, perfect segue. Thanks, Jeff.
As we begin to wrap up, I just wanted to let everybody know that if you're looking at the chat, at the very bottom where you can enter something in the chat, there's on the right side, there are 3 dots, and that's where you can save the entire chat for the meeting, so you can follow up on all these links. We will be putting many of the links onto the webpage where you found the information and registered in the next few days, including the recording of today's workshop and the PowerPoint. So a lot of information will be there, but always, if you didn't know how to save the chat, you can save that to your local computer through those 3 little dots. And you can also, of course, email us at, you see the information on the screen. And one more reminder, and that's been put in there, the link for the survey, if you could please, that really does help us plan for upcoming workshops. The next one will be in May. And Dena and Ray, anything else before we conclude the workshop and move to open discussion and networking? That's optional.
Just thanks so much to the wonderful speakers. It was a very fantastic workshop, very informative, and I appreciate all of the speakers coming in, sharing their knowledge with us. It was very good, so thank you for organizing this.
Absolutely. Great topics and perfect timing for us to get ready for Tsunami Week coming up in March. So we look forward to having all those resources. And now we move into open discussion. So this is your opportunity again to share information, or if there's specific questions you have.
I just want to make one quick comment. There was a slide during my portion of the presentation that showed the email address incorrectly. Oh no, it was correct.
No, I corrected it.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Mark. That is the correct email address. So some of you may have saw the HMG one that is not valid. Thank you for doing that, Mark.
Yeah, I wanted to be correct in the slides we make available afterwards too.
Perfect. Thank you for making that adjustment.
And if any presenter wants to update anything, that let me know today or so if there's any changes that should be updated. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the slides again. And this really is just what we're trying here is not have any real formal structure, but any topics of earthquake, information you need, earthquake or tsunami, or preparedness in general, things you'd like to share, links. When you put links into the chat, it's always good to put them first into a browser and then copy what's in the top of the browser, because it will put in the right HTTP : part that is needed for your link to be live. That's just a tip, but this is sharing what you're up to. This is introducing yourself to this community. If you wanting to meet others like you can certainly do so. You can raise your hands, you can just start talking. It's open discussion. And it's optional. We thank you for participating so far today. We're just going to kind of plan to go until noon, but if we kind of run out of steam, we'll end beforehand too.
Hi, I just had a quick question. Is there an airport, or there was the airport practice or exercise at Oakland Airport? Is there one for San Diego International Airport or for Southern California?
Sure, Jeff, do you know?
Hi, this is Jeff. I'm with Emergency Management at SFO Airport. Airports are required for their airport certification to conduct. Let me turn my video on. For some reason, it's not coming on. But if you can hear me okay, to conduct once every 3 years a full-scale emergency training exercise. It all depends on the airport. Typically, they'll do once every 3 years. SFO does it every year. But during the pandemic, we kind of put a little bit of a hiatus on that. Oakland's is apparently doing this in I guess in April, according to Will Kuna, what he said. But if you wanted to send me an email, I could inquire with our counterparts down in San Diego to see if they are doing one. But unfortunately, I don't know offhand, but I could find out for you. I'll put my email in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
It sounds, Hillary, like you're in San Diego, so
Yes, I am.
come to the CISA conference and ask your other counterparts.
The only thing I
can
could
start
add
one
to
if you
that,
haven't one.
sorry, Dena, didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, that's fine.
No, so I just wanted to let the group too know that we are updating the San Diego County tsunami hazard map for evacuation planning right now. I have a draft version that I have to go in the field and verify in like 2 weeks. And so we're in the process of updating those maps, and those will be hopefully coming out sometime this summer. So keep an eye out for those as it'll come out soon. And it will impact the airport, I'm sure, out there too.
Thank you.
Yeah, the new maps come a lot farther in than most of us anticipated from what the old map said.
And that's partly because they're not inundation maps. So this time around, they're evacuation maps. So we use the inundation results to drive the evacuation area. So the wet areas, we extend a small buffer to like a geographic feature, like a road. So if we do our job right, we want people completely away from the worst case scenario, though, out of the hazard zone. And it's easier to tell first responders to set up a roadblock on excuse me, a street or something, rather than just a squiggly line cutting through houses. So that's why it's increased some places it's decreased.
Right. And I think, Jeff, that's why we're going to get together with Jeff over at the airport too, because we have those borders with our jurisdictions and the airport, right? So much like in San Diego, you have areas that would need to be evacuated. So that's something that we're taking a look at now. And we have a Bayside work group specifically for tsunami with our Zone Haven platform that we're adding to, because we're creating an all hazard evacuation map. Oh,
I got a question about that.
Sure.
So when you're overlaying the tsunami hazard zone for evacuation on Zone Haven, does it, if it's cross-cutting one of the polygons that are in Zone Haven, does the entire like polygon get evacuated? How does that work?
Yes, and we can also go to the Everbridge side for warning to, if we need to make it specific. We can also create subzones within Zone Haven.
Oh.
So we can, just for a particular incident, cut a zone in a certain way so that if it's a partial evacuation or something like that. For us, I think we're pretty lucky here because Highway 101 pretty much is our line in the sand, if you would. Everything east of that is evacuation or inundation. And for us, it's a tough call, especially with the airport and Burlingame and Millbrae, because that's our tourism sites. We have the Bay Trails and all of the hotels. So it's not even residents in those areas, it's tourists. So, and the workforce, that is a 24/7 workforce, as Jeff knows with the airport. So a little bit different for us and how we're going to take a look at our campaign. So I look forward to working with you, Yvette and Nick, on just that, working out a campaign for the Bayside.
Tsunami Roggio.
Thanks, Dena. And we do have a lot of information available for the hospitality industry. And I encourage you too to look at Oregon's website. They did an extensive public education format for the hospitality industry. And then Tom Jordan up in Marin County has done a lot with like Airbnbs. So yeah, some of those types of hospitality folks. So there's a lot of good information out there, and we are going to be developing kind of a campaign this year here in California for the hospitality industry as well. So it's an area that we're really focused on.
Awesome.
If I could ask, just address a little quick question that you just brought up, Dena, and maybe Nick, you could give some insight on this. We've always been on the assumption that us, the airport being on the inner part of San Francisco Bay, that we could definitely see in any severe tsunami rise of the actual waters, but we really don't have a whole lot of information on if it would really happen at what height. I know that, for example, next to us is South San Francisco. And I apologize, there's some sort of technical fault with my monitor. I can't turn the camera on, I apologize. But the South San Francisco would have a level rise of about 8 feet, 7 to 8 feet in a severe incident. But what we observed in January, on January 15th, is that it didn't really rise much at all. It was high tide. So I wasn't sure if Nick or Yvette has any more new insight onto what we might expect on the inner bay. So we're not on the Golden Gate. We're not in the direct path. We've been told that the waters would have to turn 2 to 3 times to really get to us, that it would be more of a slow rise. So just a thought, question on that.
I could speak to some of that if Yvette doesn't want to chime in. So yeah, so you're absolutely right. So inside the inner bay area, it's not going to have like a big wall of water that comes in like a gigantic surge, right? Not like the outer coast would. Inside the inner bay area, you'll see tsunami-induced strong and unusual currents that will affect, harbors, docks, and any infrastructure that's near the water. And the period of tsunami is such that you'll have like a rise in water maybe for like 20 or 30 minutes at the peak, and then it'll subside again. So in lots of places like we just saw from Tonga tsunami, you'll get like an effect almost like a large king tide. Well, it'll just flood slowly on land, kind of like someone left the tap on in the bathtub, right? And a lot of areas in the inner bay are also protected by levees and such too, so it'll reduce the impact to those communities.
This is Yvette too. I want to mention something in addition to what Nick said, and also I did mention it in my presentation, something for you to think about even in the inner bay. So while there might not always be inundation, there are strong waves and currents that do occur when we have even a tsunami advisory level event like we did with the Tonga event. And so one thing you need to think about is folks that live on their boats in your marinas and harbors. And in consideration of the fact that you could have some really strong currents, as I said, going on, do you want people to remain on their boats? That's something to think about as far as evacuation, not only thinking about people on land, but again, people in boats. And we were told in one harbor area, there was a boater that was out to sea and tried to return into the harbor area during the tsunami and had to eventually turn around and go back out because the water currents were too hazardous to navigate that entrance back into the harbor area. So communication with the maritime community is extremely important. And on our tsunamizone.org website, there is a maritime website with that tsunamizone.org page. So if you do tsunamizone.org/maritime, that will bring up the maritime website, and there's all kinds of preparedness, mitigation, response, and recovery information in there for boaters. So I strongly encourage you to look at that and then think about planning for future events, how you want to communicate with that maritime community, not only residents living aboard, but your recreational boaters and your commercial boaters as well.
Yeah, as well as we have a lot of fishermen, that are along the bay waters as well as coastal. And just as an example with the Tonga tsunami, earthquake and tsunami, Berkeley did evacuate their maritime area as a site of caution. And I'm sure we'll be looking forward to their lessons learned from going through that particular evacuation and utilizing the Zone Haven platform and all of that as well. So we'll have more information on that. And maybe that's a future presentation we can do as an all hazards, because we do plan on using it for earthquake, wildfire, tsunami, severe weather, all that kind of stuff. So great. Thank you so much. Are there any other discussion items or questions?
Not to prolong it, this is Christy Duenas from Alameda County Office of Emergency Services. I just had a quick question or wanted to throw out a thought out to this group. So I don't know how many other places do, but we currently utilize Zone Haven as the emergency evacuation software to do with fire. And the campaign that revolves around that is also Know Your Zone. So as to not confuse the two, has there been any discussion, or does anyone have any ideas that might help our constituents delineate between the two? I was kind of going with Know Your Tsunami Zone, but it's a little close. I thought I'd reach out to this group and see if anybody else had any great ideas.
Yeah, that's a good point, Christy. I know, the last thing we want to do is confuse people, right? We want to be clear and consistent in our messaging, and that's something we're trying to work out as well. And that's something I'm bringing up to our Bayside work group. And maybe that is, Know Your Tsunami Zone.
As Cindy Pridmore from CGS puts in the chat, know all your zones.
Right.
Know your tsunami zone, know your fire zone, know your fault zone that you might be very near that could cause, I don't think you can, I think these are really key terms, key phrases that have been in use and across the different hazards, and they're individually, I think, as valid.
Maybe we need another website, but yeah, it should be, know all your zones, and then we'll list all of the links to Tsunami and Zone Haven and the other one that, the Know Your Fault.
Map Your Hazard.
Map Your Hazards, yeah. I think that's really the one, I always drive people to the My Hazard site because they first need to know what all their hazards are, and then you can connect them to the specific ones for their area so they can prioritize, much like we do with all our own local hazard mitigation programs. And I know we just finished updating ours, had a lot of great public input into it. So really it comes back to having the campaigns and scheduling things. And, one of the biggest things that has helped us out through the years is having the shakeout on the same third Thursday every year. Date and time really, because it's easy to remember. So I think the easier we can make things for folks to utilize and giving them the knowledge, which then gives them the power to respond instead of react, and helping yourself get prepared helps others get prepared. So, as long as we're prepared, then we can help others, right? And that's the key. It's the airplane message. I always tease Jeff about it. Yeah, we need the oxygen mask on first, then we can help everybody else. So if you're not prepared and you're not ready yourself, then that's your first step. Make sure that you get prepared, and then we can share that information.
Dena, this is Yvette, and I wanted to just follow up real quick and say I totally agree with what you were saying regarding the zones. I think it's really important for folks where you live to know what hazards face you at your home. And I know, we do think a lot about fire, and we think about tsunami, and we think about earthquake, and those are kind of differentiated, but I think it's important, if you live in an area that has multiple hazards, for you to be aware of all of those. So I think it's important, and that's the benefit that the My Hazard site does have. You can plug in your address and you can be informed of everything that could potentially impact you where you live or where you work. So I think that holistic approach to it is really important. The other thing I wanted to mention too, Dena, your comment on shakeout triggered my memory. November 5th each year is World Tsunami Awareness Day. And so that day falls same date every year. And so that's right following shakeout. So we encourage folks when you're thinking about doing shakeout activities, if you want to follow that on with a tsunami preparedness activity, that would be great timing to do that.
Yvette, I put up the My Hazards page. I just put Oakland, California as a location. You can type in your address. This just shows you, all the different types of zones and hazards and information that is provided to you when you put in your address. The link is in the chat, and so we're talking about areas of strong state responsibility area severity. I think is that fire.
So those are areas of state responsibility. So when you go down under all risks, you see earthquake hazard. And so then it tells you what you should do. So so it talks about each one. And so if you scroll back up right under state area of responsibility, it has the floodplain information, it has the earthquake fault zone, and it has the liquefaction area. And so each of those different colored areas are highlighted on the map.
And the tsunami is this
little checkered area.
Checking area.
Right. Yeah. So you pay attention to the color coding on there. So
you can zoom out. You can.
Yeah.
This is the fire. So a lot of great information there, and you can see kind of where you're at.
Right, and we have a lot of recent information, so it's important, to check and recheck, because we do our local hazard mitigation planning every 5 years. So your county, your jurisdictions have the responsibility to every 5 years look at what are the hazards in your region, what are the highest priorities, and what are the highest impacts. That's what that reporting is based on, which then helps us determine what funding we go to the state and FEMA for. So lots of different factors go into what and how we prepare for as jurisdictions based on that information. It's the same thing for us personally. So we need to be personally responsible and help ourselves again, look at your hazards, know your hazards and your zones, and share that information. And we talk about, knowing it at home, but think about, again, like I mentioned before, work, school, travel. We really want to, have this in the back of our minds. Yes, we want to go and have a wonderful vacation and enjoy it. But if you're lying on the beach in Maui, you really ought to be tied into the alert system. Or if you feel shaking, get to high ground, get to a safe place, know where that safe place is. Just like if you're staying in a high rise, know how many doors to the fire exit. Just certain things that we should have as second nature and teach our children and then help others that can't help themselves. We have a lot of folks with disabilities and access and functional needs that we are their lifeline. So whether it's in your neighborhood, at work, at school, to be cognizant and, have your buddy, right? We always used to do the buddy system in our cubicles, and now we've all been home for so long. Now we're just getting back to our cubicles again for some folks. So, again, think about your daily activities and where everybody is. I have a family rule. If somebody goes to the beach, they have to tell me, send me a text, because I want to know. If you're over on the coast and something happens, I want to know. And that was just, when the kids were younger and stuff like that, just to help ingrain that into their minds that, if you're at the beach, and you feel, strong shaking, then you need to get to high ground. And, we always go through every once in a while, and it's usually crab season, and we talk about it because we're down on the pier and whatnot. But getting into those habits of regular conversations with folks so that, it doesn't have to be daunting. You can have conversations with your family and friends and not make it so fear-based, right? No, just say, hey, you're signed up for alerts, right? And if they're not, say, oh, here, let me text you the link. Whatever we can do, make it easy for folks And then they're more likely to take action. But we need to not inundate people, you know, give them three steps or send them the link to the 7 steps, you know, make it easy for them.
Nice segue, Dena. That link is right there in the chat right now, along with our resources in 15 languages and our resources for people with disabilities or accessibility resources. So, you can save the chat with the 3 dots down there at the bottom of your chat window, and make sure that you can access those later too. We will be sending out an email to the ECA members when all the resources from today are online. So be sure to join ECA if you aren't a member now. It is free, and at earthquakecountry.org/join is where you do that. And we should start to wrap up. Does anybody else have something they would like to share, or maybe you're new to the area, you want to meet others doing the type of work you do, and you just want to introduce yourself and even share your email address for people to reach out to? Anyone? Kind of what this is about as well.
Oh, hi all. Katrina Christian. Well, I'm with the city of San Leandro. I'm also on a group that part of the subcommittee that's putting together the Region 9 IAM first symposium that will be held in Garden Grove in June, from June 14th to June 16th. If you're not a member, that's okay. We will accept you, but we would love to see as many people as we can. And this is our first one, and we want to build it up. So watch out for that information. We're putting it out on lots of social media, and everyone's welcome.
Great, thanks, Katrina.
Thank you, and also for joining from San Diego. That's what you said, right? Just to confirm.
I'm from San Leandro, so where the earthquakes have been happening.
No, what happened is I read it on the screen and it said San Diego with the auto translation. So sorry about that. But you mentioned Garden Grove. You mentioned what I wanted to mention is that if you are from another part of the state, if you are from Southern California, if you haven't seen the announcement yet, we are having another workshop next week, the ECA SoCal chapter, and I just put the link to that. We'll have Yvette LaDuke back. We'll have other presentations, so you can see the topics for there. Same day, next Wednesday, 10 to 12, very similar. If you're in any part of the state, you're welcome to join. And thank you, Katrina, for sharing that.
Thanks, Mark. Ray, do you have any closing comments?
Nope, just Dana, great job facilitating this today. You were definitely a rock star, and this has been a fantastic session. Not only the main session, but the sharing session as well. So thank you. And thanks everyone for their participation.